Hello dear friends, welcome to the course of Navisworks, and at this course we're gonna master in the Navisworks software. As you're informed, the complete name of this software is Navisworks, but from now on I wanna use Navis as a short term of Navisworks. But note that the complete name is Navisworks. Actually, right now, as you can see on the screen, Navisworks was previously called Jetstream, which was produced by the company of Lightwork Design. That it was sold to the company of Autodesk in 2007 at the price of $25 million. And if you check the past of the Autodesk company, you will see that the Autodesk company has been used by other companies' products like Mental Ray that was purchased by the Autodesk company and then added to 3D Max. In continuation, we're gonna learn this software project-based and completely in the manner that I want to teach the most of the topics in my previous projects. But first of all, let me elaborate the main functions of the Navisworks software. The first of them is project viewing. It means that Navisworks allows us to review 3D models which are created in other softwares. We can export them to Navisworks and then review them. But why should we do this process in Navisworks? Supposing that if we have created a 2D model in Revit, so why should we export it to Navisworks to review it? Since Navis reduces the size of your 2D model in order to create a new 2D model sample, but in lower size. And following that, it simplifies the process of project viewing, since the volume of the file is reduced. And the second main function of the Navisworks, which is considered as the most important one, is clash detection. But note that at the first session, I don't want to go through the details, since you will be mastered in these topics in future videos. But if I want to give you a simple explanation about clash detection, I should say that we model all of the components of the instruction in different disciplines in the process of building information modeling, which includes architectural and structural components and mechanical and electrical installations. And after the modeling process, we should analyze them for identifying the cross-discipline interfaces. That at this measure, Navisworks is the best. The next function is model simulation and analysis, which is called 4D as the short term, as you can see. This enables us to manage our project, adjusting a time schedule, and also by associating time scheduling to the project components, we can create an animation which displays the project complement in different phases based on the adjusted time scheduling. That the time scheduling itself is developed by the WBS. And right now you may not understand the WBS, which stands at Work Breakdown Structure, so do not rush, since in the next sessions you're gonna learn it. The next function is Project Review, which means that we're allowed to extract data and information from our model. You can use it while you want to observe a specific height or calculate the perimeter. So despite of having these information in the source software, you can have access to them in the Navisworks as well. And the last function, as you can see on the screen, is adding commands on project components, which is a very important item. Supposing that you're performing a session in which you're explaining the model, designing, and other technical issues, you can add and place commands on the specific components of your project instead of write them down in your notebook. And these commands includes the materials, the dimension, the angles and stuff like that you can display them digitally on your models instead of write them down in your notebook. And as a result, you can share these commands with all the members of your team quickly and easily. In continuing, I have provided a short video in order to make the explanations more comprehensible. So in continuation, I play the video. Watch it carefully, since it can help you to understand the main function of the Navis, and also it gives you a first image from the Navisworks software. So in continue, let me play the video. Clash detections. Let me start from the beginning. In continue, you will see that everything is clear. For example, in clash detections contains such a process. Right now, as you can see, the clash detective tool enables you to search through your total project model, identifying cross-discipline interfaces. Navis reports these detections in PDF. And in continue, let's see the result, which is the report. As you can see, it provides us accurate details from the problems in the virtual model before construction. And right now we're gonna have the mentioned animation based on the time scheduling. As I told you, there would be WBS and also time scheduling which is attached to the Navis. And finally, you will be given this animation as you can see on the screen by this way. And also you will be given some information and details that you can consider them. And also you will be given an animation performing breakdown phases and the phases of construction of your model by this way. As you can see, based on the time scheduling, that as you can see, as the time passes, you will have different phases of the construction. You can even perform the cost management that we will talk about it in the next sessions. And right now we can see the comments which are added to the components of the model. And then we will have some images from the interior design that you can review your model. And as I told you before, the volume of the file is reduced, so we can easily navigate in your project or move in the atmosphere, save the images, and so on. But about the Navisworks software, as you can see, it is developed in 3 versions, in a way that you will be faced with these 3 versions while you want to download it or purchase it. Manage, Simulate, and Freedom. But what are these for? Actually, Manage is the completest version. In other words, the top level and has all features, but Freedom and Simulate are considered as the subcategories of Managed version. But you may wonder why it should be developed in 3 versions. I should say that because of the price issues. And Freedom is the free version of Navis, and as you can see, I have provided the features. Only real-time navigation and whole team project review are available, while other features like model review, model simulation and analysis and others are not available because it is the free version. But the Simulate is a base level and includes functionalities with the exception of Clash Detective, which is provided in lower price. And as you can see, all of the features are available except clash detection, while all of the features are available in the version of Manage. So we should have purchased the version of Manage, since the other versions, I mean Simulate and Freedom, do not meet our needs. So download and then install the Manage version, since we do not need others. And here let me give you a point. While you are changing your operating system or installing the softwares, I recommend you to install Navisworks at last, or after getting installed other softwares. If you do this, Navisworks would install the required plugins on other softwares like Revit. On the contrary, if you firstly install Navisworks before installing Autodesk Revit, after that you have to install the plugins yourself. In other words, you will have some problems. So note that Navisworks is the last one or last software that it should be installed in your device. In the continuation, let's talk about the Navisworks file types. Right now, as you can see on the screen, let me give an example about Revit structure. What are the provided file types by Revit? They are RVT, that refers to the project template files of the Revit, in a way that when you open a new file, a new template file project in Revit, and then if you save it, the file type will be RVT. The another type is RTE. Actually, project templates created in this program are saved as RTE files. They contain so-called BIM information, which stands for Building Information Modeling. The another type is RFA, which is assigned to Revit family files. And the another type is RFT, which is assigned for modeling the families. Anyway, these are not that much necessary to be known. since right now we're gonna work with Navisworks, so we should know the Navisworks file types. There are 3 file types that you should know them, meanwhile their usages and their functions, and also their differences. So watch this part carefully to understand the Navisworks file types and also the differences, since they are important. Here, before starting to explain the topic, I want to clarify an important point before, in order to learn the other topics deeply and remove the ambiguity from the learning process. First of all, you should know that Navis is an analytical software. I mean, it is used for analysis, not modeling. An analytical software that it requires to be given the primary data. After that, Navis will process the given information or data, and after that it will provide data analysis. In other words, Navis is like a machine that needs inputs, which is the data and information. After that, it does analyze the information and then provides the output. But here the file type of the input is NWC, as you can see on the screen, Navisworks cache. So the given data and information to Navisworks is NWC, and the given input to Navis or the NWC is assigned in 2 cases. Supposing that we want to export a file from Revit to Navis, so we export the file as the type of NWC. I mean, we specify the file type as NWC, and after that we import the file into Navis, or we can directly import Revit into Navis. After that, the NWC file will be created automatically. Here let me repeat this process again. As I told you before, the input which we feed Navisworks with is NWC or Navisworks cache. For example, in order to detect the interfaces, is assigned as NWC type file. Supposing that we got a project in Revit and we want to export it to Navis. So there are 2 ways. Firstly, we can export the file from Revit, and after that we create an NWC file and then we import it to Navisworks. In the next way, we do not export the file. We directly import the Revit file, Rhino file, or other files. I repeat again, we directly import the file into Navisworks. At this condition, Navisworks would create an NWC file automatically to analyze it in Navisworks. So note that while you directly import the files from 3D Max, AutoCAD, Revit, Rhino, Navis will spontaneously create an NWC file to work on it. In continuation, we will get familiar with these topics more, so do not worry if they are hard to understand. So up to this point, we have understood that the input file types in Navisworks are NWC, and in continue we're gonna feed Navis with the ingredients of Revit Architecture, NWC, and Revit MEP. And the next file types is NWF, which stands at Navisworks file, as you can see on this screen. Actually, NWF is a container which receives Navisworks cache, or in other words, NWF, which it is considered as the receptor of the NWC or Navisworks cache. So NWF hosts the primary information which is imported from other softwares. And right now, as you can see, we got a container named NWF, and as you can see, your working file that links all your NWC files. And in continue, as you can see, the NWC files are importing to this container, and NWF receives these inputs. Then in continue, as you can see, NWC has no model geometry, I mean by itself. Or in other words, suppose that we got a folder in which we have put some papers. The papers are the NWC files, but the folder itself is the NWF. So it has no model geometry. And then in continue, as you can see, it is a host for models or the NWC files. And the important point that we should consider is that the NWC files are linked to NWF, as the picture shows. And right now, speaking of link, we will understand that the exported files, which are the NWC files, are attached to the NWF files, as you can container, as you can see on the screen. And the advantage here is that if you modify your NWC files, the modification will be applied on the NWF too. Suppose that you have imported NWC files to Navisworks. You have imported the NWC file to attach it to NWF. And if your Revit file is being modified, the modifications will be considered in NWF too. So finally, to wrap it up, I should say that NWC is an external source that is assigned to NWF. That they should always be attached to NWF because NWF requires these sources in order to carry out the analysis process, like to say creating animations or detecting clashes and so on. So analytical cases just like clash detection or time scheduling, as I showed you in the video, all of these are saved in NWF files. Right now, if you haven't understood these topics well, don't worry, since I will talk about them more. And right now I'm gonna play a video which helps you to realize these mentioned topics well. But before that, let me give you another example. As I told you before, NWF is similar to a folder in which you have put some papers which are assigned to a specific purpose. So you can write down some notes on the folder in order to specify the purpose. Or for example, you can specify that this folder contains 30 pages. You can add some information or note about the content of the folder, which is written down on the folder itself. We do not write on the papers which are in the folder, but we note them on the folder itself. So the analysis which is relevant to NWC are going to be saved in NWF files. And as we may have some modifications applied on external sources along the project process, the best and the most important file type that we use it is NWF or Navisworks file. We have always an NWF file in the project which contains some NWC files, and we are carrying out some analysis that if the exported sources will be changed, the changes will be applied on the NWF file too. So there is no concerning since NWF file will be updated by itself. And right now I got a question, please answer it. I used to ask my students some questions in my virtual or online classes. Suppose that we are attending the physical classes and I want to ask you some questions and I would appreciate your answerings. Actually, the answers are not important to be heard by me, but it is important for you to just think about it and check the answer later whether it was true or not. So when I ask a question, please think about it and let your mind get engaged to the topic. So what is the question? Watch this part carefully. I expect your correct answers. Anyway, supposing that we have a NWF file and then 3 NWC files in the size of 1 megabyte for each are attached to the NWF file. And after that, we want to carry out the analysis process. For example, we have carried out the clash detection process and so on. Okay, keep this. But right now my question is, right now, if I save my NWF file, what is your expectation about the size of the file? Is it 3 megabytes or more than 3 megabytes? I'm gonna repeat my question again for those who have not understood the question. Supposing that we got 3 NWC files at the size of 1 megabyte for each, and the total size is 3 megabytes, and the NWC files are attached to the NWF file. I save my NWF file after getting finished the analysis process. Right now my question is, how much is the size of my NWF file? Is it 3 megabytes or probably less than 3 megabytes? So what is the answer? Excellent! Absolutely less than 3 megabytes. But what is the reason? Because when you save your NWF file, the NWF file does not consider the size of the NWC files. Why? Since they are attached to NWF file. So what it is saved in the NWF file? Or let me ask, what does affect on the size of NWF file? Certainly the analysis process. Did you remember the folder? The NWF size includes the text or note which has been written down on the first page of the folder. Suppose that in clash detection process you have detected 2 objects, or for example you have defined a time scheduling. All of these are going to be saved in NWF file. and these are going to compose the size of the NWF file. So the size of NWC files does not affect an NWF file, and NWF file is provided in lower size. For instance, if you have linked these three NWC files, which includes 3 MB, you will see that the size of the NWF file is less than the NWC files, since the NWF file is composed by the analysis process. Very well, the next one is NWD, which it is a simple type, as you can see, Navisworks document, and right now as you can see, it contains all model geometry which are binded in the container or the NWF. In fact, the NWC files are not linked anymore, as you can see on the screen. Thenceforth, NWD is a container that models geometry are binded in. So as a result, the NWD format includes the NWC files and also the analysis process, which is more than the NWF file. But what it is used for? Actually, as you can see, the NWD file is independent to the NWC files because it is considered as a complete file that contains all models geometry binded and model analysis information. And it is used when you want to share a comprehensive file with your employer or assign it as archive. So right now, as you can see, the main difference between NWD and NWF: in NWD file, the NWC files are no more linked, while they are linked in NWF. I got one more question. Right now, if I import these three NWC files into NWD, and after that I want to carry on the process of analysis, and after that I save the file as NWD, then how much will be the size of NWD file? More than 3 MB or less than 3 MB? Well done. I'm sure that you have answered more than 3 MB, since as I told you before, the NWD file contains all model geometry binded or the NWC files and also the model analysis information. So it is more than 3 MB. And right now, as you can see, there's no connection between NWD file and the NWC files. Thenceforth, it is not a proper format while we are carrying out the project. Since if we modify the NWC files, after that the modifications won't be applied on the NWD file, since they are not linked anymore, and right now NWD is independent to NWC files. So it is not proper to use this format while carrying out the process. And as I told you before, we use this format to just send a file to our client, employer and others, while we should use NWF format while we are working with our NWC files, since there's a link between NWF and NWC files, and NWC files can influence on NWF. In continue, I'm gonna play a video about NWC, NWF and NWD in order to make it more comprehensible. Actually, the video is so informative that I enjoyed watching it. Anyway, let's watch the video. NWC, NWF and NWD. Right now, as you can see, we got a picture which it is considered as the Revit model file or RVT file. In fact, this picture, which it is displayed in high quality, it is considered as the main model and the main source, which it is modeled in Revit model, and the format is RVT. Then in continue, we export the file from Revit. Actually, right now printing the picture shows the exporting process. In the continuation, after exporting the file, we will have the NWC file or Navisworks cache, as you can see on this screen. So the content in both formats are the same, but their formats are different. That here the RVT, it is the original file type, but the NWC cache is the exported file. Very well. Keep these two types into consideration. Let's continue. Since after that, we're gonna go for NWF. NWF file set. As I told you before, NWF is similar to a container, and right now as you can see, the folder is used to simulate the NWF file. Then inside the folder we can put whatever we want. We can put NWC files, Revit files, or whatever, it does not matter, as you can see. And the notes will be written down on the transparent paper or the analysis process. In continue, you will see some lines will be sketched on the paper. Let's see. Firstly, it puts the NWC file, which is the exported picture. Then it puts the transparent paper on it. And this action, as you can see, means that the NWC file will be preserved. After that, the analysis will be carried out by this way. For example, the dimensions, the notes, comments, and so on, that may be changed later. After that, the transparent paper will be put in NWF file. And as I told you before, the NWF file only contains model analysis information. It is similar to when we import two NWC files. After that, we identify the problems and interfaces. After that, we put it into NWF folder. Check this out. And as I told you before, the size of NWF is lower than the size of NWC, as you can see in the video. And as I told you before, the NWC files can be modified, so that NWF files should be updated too. So although NWC and NWF are linked to each other, but they are separate from each other. And the NWC file is editable, as you can see, so that NWC and NWF files can be modified along with each other. Check this out. Here we got the NWD file, but why it is called NWD? I want you to answer this question. Excellent. As I told you before, NWD file contains the NWC or the exported model geometries and also the analysis information. And right now these two are combined to each other and they cannot be separated from each other. Let's check it out. Since the model's geometry are bonded, while in NWF, as you can see, NWF and NWC are separated from each other, while in NWD they are mixed. Or in other words, they are embedded. And right now, the analysis information cannot be modified, since right now they are embedded into Navisworks document and they are ready to be shared with others. So this is not the proper format while you are carrying out the analysis. Right now, if you haven't understood the Navis files types yet, I recommend you to watch this part again, so move the video backward to understand this part deeply, so that you won't be faced with difficulties in the future sessions while working with these file types. And right now I'm gonna stop the video and I want you to rewatch this part, and after that we're gonna open the software and then begin the instruction. So watch this part carefully. And right now, let's talk about the environment of the software. And right now, we're working with the version of 2021. And I should mention that Autodesk company releases the new versions of its products usually from March to June at each year. However, Navis does not receive fundamental changes at each year. I mean at its new versions actually. Anyway, as I promised you before, at this course we're gonna work on the projects that were carried on by myself or I was engaged in. For instance, in this project we got a tower that I was in charge of clash detection. So I played an important role and I have analyzed the project in Navis, and after that I shared the reports with my employer. After that they send the reports to the consultant. After that the consultant revised the reports. After that I was given the new model to analyze it. By the way, speaking of the environment of Navis, as you can see, like other softwares, here we got a menu in which there are some options, and at the top of the page we got a quick access toolbar in which the tools that are commonly used are gathered here. However, you can customize your quick access toolbar as you can see, and to choose the tools to show below the ribbon by this way. And just like Revit structure, I mean Autodesk Revit, we got a ribbon as you can see, in which you can find all of the tools in different categories as you can see. For example, in Home tab, you can add your files. Here you got Clash Detective, 4D, Timeliner, Quantification, and so on. At the right side of the page, we got some tools which are important, and then top of these tools you got the view cube by which you can control the view of your scene. and you will have some options if you right click, and you can switch to views as you can see. And if I'm not mistaken, you're familiar with these since most of the softwares got this tool. And at the right side of the page we got the navigator that we require these all the time. I mean, it is more necessary than the view cube, so we should have access to these navigating tools. But what if we do not have access to the navigation tools? For example, I close it. You can have access to these in View tab. Check this out, navigation bar. I click on it. You can choose to display it on your scene or not, and also the view cube. So by this way you can control the displayment of navigation bar and view cube in View tab. My recommendation is that to take some notes, some brief notes, a short note to help you keep the important points in your mind so that you can realize your mistakes and then practice them more. And also you can write down the points. So don't forget to take notes for reviewing the main points and also practicing the techniques and then realizing your mistakes. So up to this point we have learned how to control the displayment of navigation bar and view cube. And right now, as you can see, we got a palette named selection tree. This selection tree is a dockable window which displays a variety of hierarchical views of the structure of the model. And in other words, it shows the files that you have opened them in Navis. For example, as you can see, I have opened Arc, Mesh Hat Rate Center, STR and MEP. So we have imported the architecture, structure and installation files, and if the selection tree was closed, you can return it in Home tab. After that, click on Selection Tree to just return it. However, it is usually open since it displays us the open files. And right now I want to show you how to import files into Navis. That is a very important part. So I recommend you to watch this part of the video carefully, since for starting the project at first you should import your files. Actually, you may wonder that importing files in Navis is a simple process. That firstly we should open menu by this way, open, then in continue I select one of my files, then in Navis folder. Very well, right now as you can see we got 4 files as type of Navisworks cache, that it starts from architecture, electrical, mechanical and structure, which are NWC files, and right now I'm gonna work on the architecture file. Very well, note that right now we got the project opened. Meanwhile the project is opened, I open the architecture by this way. Then in continue we should choose whether we want to save the changes or not. This shows that when you want to open a new file, the previous one will be closed. Since you're not allowed to open 2 projects simultaneously, just like in Revit or AutoCAD, that enable you to keep 2 open projects, while in Navis we can open only a single project. I click on No, then the new file will be opened. Check this out. Here is the file. So by this way you can open your files or import them to Navis and then work on them. So up to this point we have learned the opening process. But what if you may want to add the structure or the installation files? Should you go through the same way? By this way, that click on open and then selecting the structure. Check this out, absolutely not, since the previous or the architecture file is closed. So what should we do? Actually, when we want to work on a project in Navis, we need to open, for example, 4 files along with each other and then combine them. So this is not the convenient way, but we can use this way for opening the first discipline or the first file. But for the subsequent projects or files, we should use append. Right now, if I click on append, then I choose mechanical installation, then it will be added to selection tree, and the current file is kept opened. And as you can see, the installation is added to the project. Again, I click on append to add the electrical installation. And finally, I add the architecture file to let you observe the added installation file. I mean, the order in appending your files does not matter. So append and then architecture by this way. Actually, I made a mistake and have appended the architecture twice. I delete it. No big deal. I just did select it from the selection tree and then delete it. Again, I open append for adding electrical installation. Very well. As I mentioned before, in selection tree, the opened files are displayed and you can check your appended files. And in continue, we'll work on the navigation process, for example, moving, hiding the objects, and so on. But note that the first stages of the video are very important, since they provide you with the basic knowledge that you need to work with the Navis. However, here you got another option named merge, that in next sessions I will talk about it, since if I want to go through merge, it would be somehow complicated. But I give you a brief explanation about merge. As you can see, when you add geometry and data from selected files to the current 3D model or 2D sheet, merging removes the duplicated content such as geometry and markups. But in the future, I will explain merge more. By the way, I got a question for you. Right now, if I want to open a project and then work on it in Navis, what tool should I use? Open or append? That's right, absolutely append, since we use open for just opening the first discipline or template file. But after that, we use append to add the other files. Then they will be added to selection tree. You may want to close the view to just empty the scene, similarly as Revit or other softwares. In Revit, you're enabled to empty the page. After that, the trademark would be appeared, but you cannot find such an option in Navis. But how can we empty the scene in Navis? To do this, we should open a new template file. So I click on no, then I open a new template file. So as a result, we cannot close the project. Check this out, there is no close icon. And if you want to empty the space or the page, you can click on new to open a new template file, then you will have an empty space. Very well. At this time, I want to import a villa into Navis, and in the continuation, we're gonna consider some specific topics, or actually items. But which items? Actually, if you remember, as we were talking about Navisworks file types, let me open it. Right here in NWC format, we can find two items. As I told you before, you can export your Revit file and then assign the type as NWC, and after that importing the file into Navisworks. Or the other way is that to import the file to Navisworks directly. Suppose that we got a Revit file, so I drag it and then I drop it into the Navisworks. Actually, I'm gonna explain the differences between these two ways of importing files to Navisworks. Well done. So to do this, I have considered two Revit files, which are assigned to modeling a villa. Actually, both of them are the same, but the names are different. For example, I want to import the first of them directly to Navisworks, and the name is Villa Revit to Navis. But the second one is Villa Aqua, that the suffix is assigned as NWC. First of all, I want to export this file as an NWC file, and after that, I want to import it to Navis. But note that when you want to import your Revit file into Navis, you should take the version of the Revit into consideration in a way that the Revit file should be older than the Navisworks version, or at least they should be the same version. But if the version of Revit is newer than Navis, you would have some difficulties, since the version of Navis should be newer than Revit. Anyway, I open the Revit file of Villa to observe the villa. I drag and then drop the Revit file into Autodesk Revit. And as I told you before, I want to import the first file directly into Navis, but the second one is going to be exported to NWC format. So firstly, I open both files in Revit by this way. So firstly, I want to export this file as NWC type. Here as you can see, we got NWC. If this option was not available for you, shows that you have installed Navis before Revit. But as I told you before, you should install Navis after other softwares. Anyway, I adjust the settings. I will talk about all of these options, so don't worry about these. And after that, I specify the file path of the NWC file on desktop and then save. The file is being exported as NWC by this way. Right now, let me show you the NWC file. Check it out. And after that, I can import the NWC file into Navisworks. And right now, as we have opened a new template file in Navisworks, there is no difference between using append or open, because this file is considered as the first file that is going to be imported to our template file. So I click on open, then I import the NWC file by this way. Check it out, the villa is imported to Navis. Well done. And in the continuation, I want to import another file, but directly. Before that, let me open another Navis project template file to assign it for the file which is going to be imported directly. As I mentioned before, when you import a Revit file directly to your Navis, after that, Navis would silently create a new NWC file format. So to show you the process, let me arrange these two views. So following that, you will see the Navis would convert the RVT file into NWC. Open. As you can see, all files are supported here. Actually, as you can see, a wide range of types are supported by Navis. Like to say Rhino, that nowadays Rhino is commonly used among users, or for example SketchUp. So don't worry about the file type, since Navis supports most of them. But note that if your imported file is RVT, Navis would provide you with more options. So right now, as we are exporting a Revit file, we will have more capabilities in Navis. I specify RVT file, and then I choose the file. Here it is. Right now, keep your eye on this file. Right now, if I click on open, check this out. You will see that Navis would create automatically an NWC file. And after that, it imports the created NWC file. Therefore, it has two jobs. Firstly, it should create an NWC file inside the software, and then it should import it to the platform. But while you export an NWC file from Revit, it will be quickly added to Navis. But right now, let's check this out. Wait for a second. After that, the process will be finished. Here, actually, there's a point. And the point here is that when you directly import your Revit file to Navis, it takes a long time, while importing an NWC file into Navis takes no time. So up to this point, we have learned a point. A big point. We cannot directly import our Revit files, especially the projects which got high volumes, since it takes a very long time to import the file directly into Navisworks. And as you can see, right now we're working with a simple sample, so going through this way is just wasting time. And previously I have tried to import my projects directly into Navis, but I could not manage to import the file directly, so I had to export the file from Revit at first to create an NWC file, and after that importing the file into Navis. And right now, as you can see, the NWC file is added, and after that the file is imported to Navis. Right now, let's have a review out of the given points. First of all, note that the version of Revit should be older than the version of Navis. And right now, the version of Revit here is 2020, while I'm using 2021 version of Navisworks. And another important point here is that in projects which contains heavy geometries, you may not manage to import your file directly to Navisworks, since the process may take a long time and your device may crash. So we should export the NWC file from Revit. And right now I want to tell the differences between importing the files to Navis directly and exporting the file at first from Revit to create an NWC file and then import it to Navis. First of all, I want to attract your attention to selection tree. Right now, as you can see, we'll Revit to Navis RVT. So right now, as you can see, despite of creating an NWC file in Villa folder, the suffix of RVT informs us that this file has been imported directly. While at the another project, if I open it, as you can see, the format of the file is mentioned, which is NWC, which shows that the file has been exported from Revit. Here, let me give you a point. NWC has got no version. It means that you can export your NWC file from Revit, actually in the version of 2020, and then open the exported file in the Navis, for example, version of 2010. Let me give you an example. Suppose that you got a model which it is modeled in the Revit of 2020. After that, I export my model in NWC format since NWC has got no version. And right now, the exported NWC file from Revit 2020 can be opened in the version of 2010 of Navisworks, and there would be no limitations. So as a result, NWC has got no versions. Very well, let's get back to the project. Right now, we've got two types, NWC and RVT, as you can see. And in the continuation, I'm gonna save this file in order to give an exam. So I press Ctrl S. Right now, as you can see, we can assign the type of the saved file. And after that, you can save your file. Here I got a question for you, so please do not cheat. First of all, tell me that what are the available versions that I can assign my file as. As I told you before, we had three types: NWC, NWF, and D. So the question is, what type is allowed to be specified as the type of the file? Among these three types, NWC, NWD, and NWF. I just want you to think about it. So what is the answer? That's right, those are NWF and NWD. As you can see on this screen, NWF and NWD are available, but why cannot we use NWC? As I told you before and also in the video, right now we are saving the folder or the container, so the container cannot be saved as NWC. You know, NWC is just like an ingredient which is gonna be used in cooking, while the NWF is just like the cooked food, and it is considered as the output of the process. So we can either save NWF or NWD. The next question is, what is the convenient or what is the proper file type should we use here, as we are carrying out the project and the project has not been finished yet? So what is the best choice, NWF or NWD? Correct, absolutely NWF, since the project is still in progress. And right now, if I choose NWD, all of the NWC files would be embedded into the container, which is the NWF file. After that, you're not able to modify it. So here I should use NWF, while you can use NWD for sharing the file with others. Well done, I saved the file in NWF, and actually those questions were very important, so don't forget to take notes. So the file is saved. Let me save the another file right here in this way. Actually, the first session of the course is so important and you should watch it carefully and also in a patient manner, since you should learn the basic knowledge and you'll need these topics for detecting the clashes. So right now just focus on this topic. After that we'll go through professional topics. Right now just try to learn the basic knowledge and basic topics in detailed and deeply. For example, what happens? For example, what is the differences between importing the Revit file directly or exporting the NWC file from Revit? And in continue, I have prepared an image to show the differences between these two processes. But let me open it. Wait for a second. I think here it is. Very well, check this out. Right now the topic is the relation between Revit and Navis. I mean, whether you import your Revit file directly to Navis or export your file in an NWC file and then import it to Navis, it specifies the relation between these two softwares. Right now, as you can see, transferring files from Revit to Navis is called refresh or updating. It means that we modify our file in Revit, and after that they will be detected in Navisworks. The another relation is transferring files from Navis to Revit, which is called switchback, which it means that we carry out some processes in Navis. After that, we will observe the influences in Revit. Let us have a review again. We make some changes in Revit and then we check them in Navis, which is called refresh update. As you can see, there the model will be updated. After that, we apply some modifications in Navis so that we check the changes in Revit, which is called switchback. But right now the question is, in NWF file type or a type in which we carry out our projects, do we have switchback in the condition that we directly import our Revit file into Navisworks? So do you think we have switchback if we directly import our Revit file into Navisworks? What about refresh or update? So I just want you to think about this. So in the continuation, let's check it out whether we have switchback or refresh or updating while importing a Revit file directly into Navisworks. So right now, let me open the Navis file in which I have imported the RVT file. Well done. I open the Revit file here, for example. I select the roof since I want to work on it, for example. Following that, I make some modifications. By this way, then I select these stairs, or for example this wall. I move it by this way and then continue. As you can see, I apply some modifications and then I apply the changes. Well done. Then in continue, I save the changes by this way. After that, I open Navis. Let me display the picture again. Do we have refresh update or not? You can guess the answer. And let me show you the refresh. Check this out. I will explain it later. Right now, I just want you to have a first image. So what do you think? Do we have refresh update or not? So right now in continue, I click on refresh. Actually, when we directly import our RVT file into Navis, there is a high possibility that the file will be updated. But right now, as you can see, it takes a long time, just like when we wanted to import the RVT file. As you can see, the process of refreshing is as long as importing the RVT file. But as you know, we have made some changes that the file is going to be updated and the analysis information is remained, such as the clash detection reports, so it's worth it and we should take our time. Very well. Right now, as the process is getting done, I open the picture again. I'm gonna answer to the question. That the question was, is refresh tool work on it or not? That, as you can see, the answer is clear, that the RVT file is getting updated. After that, I'm gonna talk about switchback, and you may not have an idea about it, that what does switchback mean? Or for example, what influences can Navis have on Revit? Don't worry, since I'm gonna answer these questions in a few seconds. And after that, we will go through these two cases in NWC file types. And we'll talk about the modifications in NWC files. Very well, as you can see, the Revit file is refreshed and the changes that we made in Revit file are updated here. So let's talk about switchback. What does it mean? For instance, I'm moving and navigating in Navis. Following that, I realize some problems. Or for example, I haven't assigned the correct type of the window. So I select the window, then I command Navis to select this window in the project of Revit. Supposing that you are checking your model in Navis, then you detect some problems. After that, you want to find the detected instance in Revit. So you may face difficulties while you are trying to find the exact instance. But here, I right click and I click on switchback. Right now, as you can see, the switchback is unable to connect to Revit. So at this condition, to solve the problem, I open Revit. Then in add-ins tab, After that, in external tools, then I click on the option of Navisworks Switchback 2021 to enable the switchback system. After that, when I click on this, apparently nothing has happened. But from now on, if I open Navis and then I again select the window, right click, switchback, then this window will be selected in Revit, and as you can see, Revit is highlighted. And right now if I open Revit, here in the project browser, as you can see, a view is created named Navisworks Switchback, in which the object is selected. And this is great. Let me try one more time in Navis. Check this out. I select another object. For example, I select this stair, then I right click, I click on switchback. After that, I open Revit. Then you will see that in your current view, the object is selected in Revit, since the view is adjusted by Revit. Well done. So this process is called switchback, that you can have access to a specific object in Revit. Let me open the picture again. So in the file type of NWF, when we import our Revit file directly into Navis, switchback and refresh options are available. Okay, so both are available. Let's talk about NWC file type. What about when we export our file in NWC file and after that we import it to Navis? Are we allowed to use switchback, or is refresh enabled? Let's see. I open Revit, as you can see. After that, I open the Villa file in Revit 2021 in order to export the file as NWC type, and then check the refresh and switchback availabilities. But note that you should once turn on or enable the switchback option in Revit from Add-ins tab, and after that the switchback process would be okay. After that Revit and Navis would be connected to each other. Well done. Here we got the villa. After that, let me open Navis right here. If you agree, let's try switchback. At first actually, for example, I select the roof, then I right click, then I click on switchback. Check this out. I open Revit. Check this out. Let me see. So as I was saying, in continue, again I select the roof in Navis, then I right click, I select switchback. As you can see, Revit is highlighted. I open it. Well done. Right now, as you can see, a view is created here, Navisworks switchback, and we got access to this object. But because of the crop, it is not visible here. It doesn't matter. But the point here is that the view is created and the object is selected. I try one more. For example, I select this object and I right click. I click on switchback, then I open Revit. Right now, as you can see, the floor is selected automatically by Revit. So we understood that switchback option is available in NWC file types, which are imported to Navis. And I emphasize that you should have used the same versions of Navis and Revit both. You should have used equal version in both softwares, but it is not required while you want to import your Revit file into Navis. The version does not matter. Well done. Let's talk about refreshing. So I open Revit. Right now, as you can see, I'm using the version of 2021. For example, I delete the roof. So let's remove the roof. Check this out. Clear. After removing the roof, however, we'll need it in our next projects. So let me make some changes. For instance, I can add a new wall. Actually, we don't have to remove the elements. We can add one. Check this out. I sketch a wall, then I extend it. By this way, I add the wall, then I save my project in order to make some changes on my project. After that, I open Navis. Then in Home tab, I click on Refresh. I click on Refresh multiple times. Check it out. It is enabled. The refresh is not available. But why? Since we have exported our file, our RVT file, as NWC type, and the NWC type is imported to our Navis, and the NWC file is not dependent to Revit anymore. In other words, the NWC file is not linked to Revit. Did you get it? But while you import your Revit file directly into Navis, let me show you. Since the NWC file type is created by Navis itself, it is still linked to Revit. So when you make changes in Revit, you can use refresh tool. So when you export your file as NWC type, switchback is available, but refresh not. So let us have a review about our findings. Basically, while we are carrying out our project in Navis, we import our Revit file into Navis directly by click and drag. Since if we export it as NWC type, we won't be able to refresh it. But as I mentioned before, in heavy projects, we are forced to export our file in NWC type. Since if we import it directly, Navis would import the Revit file and also would create the NWC file types simultaneously. That in this process you may face difficulties. In continue, I want to emphasize again on these topics, and if you did not get these, I want you to rewatch them, since these are the basic and required knowledges, actually topics. And you can find this picture or image in the attached files. That in NWF file, switchback is available in both NWC and RVT file types, while refresh is not available in NWC file type. And the most important point here is that while you want to use switchback, the versions of Navis and Revit should be equal. Up to this point, we have talked about NWF file type. What if we save our file in NWD file type? As you can see on the image, refreshing is no longer available in both RVT and NWC file types, since your files are no longer linked to Revit. But you're allowed to use switchback in both cases of RVT and NWC file type. And in continue, if we want to have a quick check, let me show you. I open Navis. As you can see, we got the RVT file that both options, switchback and update, are available here. So here I save my file as I told you before, NWD. Then I click on save. Wait for a second. Then in continue. I select this wall, right click, switchback. Then I get back to Revit. As you can see, switchback is available. Then in Revit, I add one wall by this way in order to just make some modifications. Then I save my file. Wait for a second. By this way. And then if I get back to Navis again, refresh does not work, as you can see. So in NWD file type, the only available option is switchback. Refresh is not available in both NWC and RVT, while they were available in NWF, actually only one of them, which was the RVT file. Well, actually, I tried to do my best to teach you these topics, and I hope you have understood these. I recommend you to have a review, and after that we will go through some topics which are directly related to the Navisworks itself, which are more professional. So practice the given points up to this point. Actually, I used to emphasize some points in all of my courses that I would appreciate it if you answer my questions. The next point here is that watching the videos one after another, just like movies and series, would teach you nothing. Actually, I have been teaching for many years and I'm sharing my experiences with you, and I want to ensure you that this approach does not work. So I want you to just pause the video. After that, open a new template file in Revit. Then add some objects, for example some walls. It doesn't matter what. Then try to carry out the told techniques. After that, practice them in order to learn them deeply. So by doing this, you will easily acquire these topics, for example NWF, NWC, NWD, and their options, to learn all of these topics by heart, so that you have learned the prerequisite topics. So don't hurry up. Practice the given techniques, rewatch the video. That Navisworks is a simple software that it takes a short time to be mastered in. So please practice the items, then continue.